Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Power Within podcast. And today's episode, a little bit of a change of pace. I have a good friend and colleague on with me here today. You may know Stephen McGill.
Morning.
And hello, Stephen, and good
Hi.
morning. And thanks for coming on the show.
Very welcome. Glad to be here.
Great stuff, great stuff. And as I kind of mentioned, it's a little bit of a change of pace here today, folks. We're going to focus in on a mutual love that we have, and that's for music and how music has influenced and inspired us over the course of our lives. And we're going to talk a little bit about as well how music is and can be very important for your mental health and can play a big role there as well. And there's loads we can get into on that, isn't there, Stephen?
100%. It's endless.
Great stuff. And so just to kick it off, what's your earliest memory of getting into music and how did that road kind of start for you?
So 11, I think I was about 11 years old. I'd obviously heard a lot of music growing up in the household. It wasn't really my style. My mum used to stand in the kitchen to do the ironing and used to have country music on in the background. Never really gelled with it. My sister, whenever we went anywhere in car trips, she used to dominate the radio. So it was a lot of a lot of Christy Berg, a lot of Michael Jackson, a lot of
Right, yeah.
things like that. That again wasn't my thing. But my earliest memory was when I was 11. I used to love Quantum Leap, the TV show. You
Right.
remember that?
Okay. Yeah, I do. Indeed.
So in one of the episodes, Scott, the main character, he leaps back into his own childhood body, but he was sitting on the porch with his either brother or sister that was in his adult life had died. So it was meeting them again when he was young. But he picked up a guitar and he started to play Imagine by John Lennon. And obviously it had a profound impact on me that I still talk about it and get goosebumps today. But just knowing that someone could produce a sound out of this instrument that was so beautiful, like Imagine, and it was the first piece of music I think that I actually resonated with, that just spoke to me. And I thought, I have to learn that. I have to learn that. So I spoke to my mom and everything. And there was a guy actually on the back of our yard that lived, his backyard touched our backyard. And John Ramsey, he's passed away now, but he actually gifted me a guitar. And this was when I was 11. This is probably 1991. So the guitar was already 20, 30 years old. But I used to play this guitar religiously in the kitchen on my own for about an hour a day, just trying to learn as much as I could to eventually one day then play Imagine by John Lennon.
Right.
So that's where it all started.
Great stuff. And can you play the guitar now? You can?
I have 15 of them.
Wow, 15.
So yeah, I play a
Lovely
guitar.
collection.
Yeah, it's quite a popular thing in the music. Anyone who plays an instrument, you have gear acquisition syndrome. So which you're always chasing the next guitar or the next pedal or the next amplifier. It's going to make you sound a different way and play a different way. And but yeah, I've been in many bands. I've toured all around the country. We've had residencies in Belfast. We've played Whelan's in Dublin. We've played loads of different gigs throughout the years. So still play. I was actually playing yesterday. I don't often get time to play now, but I try and make time as much as I can.
Brilliant. And of course, folks, myself and Stephen are hypnotherapists, and Stephen has been very, very helpful to me over the last 12 months when you come to the technical side of the work that we do.
Yeah.
Because, folks, I'm a little bit old school. I'm at the age where, can be a real challenge for me to get out there in the world that we live in, social media and all these different platforms, your Instagrams, Facebooks, TikToks, God knows what else.
Yeah.
And Stephen, thanks very much for the help that you've been there on occasions where I needed that. I was at a point where I was just a block,
Yeah,
where some of this stuff can be very overwhelming, as you know.
of course.
But
Yeah, it is. It's if you're not of that mindset of that world where it just comes natural to me for some reason. It's just I remember programming my very first game. I can't remember what age I was, but I remember sitting in my bedroom with a magazine and coding it. And ever since then, I like music. I just had a love for technology and figuring out how things work and why
yeah.
they work. Just that
And that was
inquisitiveness.
a great thing then when we connected, that like we had a few occasions where I know you helped me out on the techie part of it, but it turned out then that we had another
Yeah,
thing in common, which is the love for the music. You started liking some of my Facebook posts, of course,
yeah,
and the records. I have quite a large record collection of home, folks, and sometimes the odd time I do share what I'm listening to on a Saturday
yeah.
night or whatever, and you started to like those, and then
Mhm.
you kind of started to look at your stuff,
Yeah,
and the concerts
yeah,
popped up now and again that you were attending.
yeah.
So you obviously have as part of your life music. It's a big passion for you.
Yeah, it's just it's everything. It's really hard to encapsulate, I think, what it means to me in something that makes sense to people. I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels this way, but a
Yeah,
particular genre of music as well that just gets me in the right place, mentally where I need to be. The likes of progressive rock and alternative and grunge and um, Alexa's joining in there too. But 2 sec, Alexa, stop. That's very strange. Did you hear that?
I don't hear it.
So as I was talking, my device that I shall not mention because it will be summoned started to play Great Gig in the Sky.
Well, leave it on.
No, no,
I
no,
love
it'll distract me. I
that.
actually do have a funny story about that. Well, not a funny story, but another story about that. That was one of the songs that I first got my daughter into. When she was very, very young, I was teaching her about emotions and about how the song has no lyrics, but it's the emotion that you can convey without lyrics. So you can put a complete message across in an instrumental and just, a vocal instrumental. A Claire Torres, I think it was. It was like her
That's right.
second or third take, maybe off the street, just singing the song. But yeah, so that's a side note. But yeah,
That's
I
right.
think there's not a time in my life that I can't associate a memory with a song or an album or something that I got obsessive about. I like to when I hear a song I like to break it down and listen to it repetitively. So I just like it in my head and listen to it. It makes me feel good, releases that dopamine hit
Yeah.
or thing. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, whenever you started, I think that was really cool. The way you're involving your kids in it as well,
Yeah.
giving them that education, and the musical education, and it's beyond the actual music that you hear. It's everything else that goes with that. That I
Well,
just,
it,
of
it started out, Stephen, actually, as just a way to spend some quality time
course,
with my children.
yeah,
And I'm collecting records now for about 8 years.
yeah,
And so in that time, like what we used to do, especially during the whole COVID thing and the winter months,
yeah,
is we get a jigsaw puzzle. And
hmm
I'm talking about like 2,000, 3,000 piece puzzle.
yeah,
And they loved them at the time. And we go and do that. But when we're doing it, it gives us the opportunity to just spend time together and listen to some music.
of course,
And I'd stick on the record, spin a record, and we listen to them. We got into it that way.
yeah,
And over time, yeah, the both, especially Emma, my daughter, she's 11, like she's definitely
yeah,
got really big into the music. And now she has her favorites, and she's like for 11-year-old, like she's really patient. Like she'd listen to the whole record,
yeah.
and and she really gets it, you know. And so
No,
does Owen as well. But Owen, like you can see the different tastes coming out,
yeah,
where Emma be more into kind of the Beatles and the Beach Boys. Owen would be more into AC/DC. He likes
Yeah.
a bit of harder rock going on.
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen and
Brilliant. Yeah.
that stuff. So it morphed into then that we kind of got tired with the puzzles,
Yeah.
and we start doing art. You've
Brilliant.
probably seen.
Yeah.
And so we'd pick or should I say, they would pick. So I'd always let them choose what do you want to draw.
Yeah.
So they pick a classic album art
Yeah.
and to recreate.
Yeah.
And it started out just as a bit of fun, but actually, both our lives, especially Emma, because well, Emma is 2 years older than Owen, so you
Right.
can factor that into mind.
Sure.
But it was starting out to be really, really cool, really good, to the point where like she loves doing them. Like she could spend a week doing one,
Yeah.
and really puts a lot of focus and fine attention to detail into
Yeah.
them. And she uses like just pencils, color pencils, markers, paints, whatever, a mixture of all. And some of the end products, as you see, should been
Yeah.
sharing on Facebook, like are amazing. So we ended up
Yeah.
getting those framed.
Brilliant.
So we have six of them framed,
Very good.
up in the hall, three in the hall, downstairs, and three upstairs. So a very understanding wife. I
Yeah.
had a friend come along recently, Saturday night actually,
Hmm.
and we had a joke and a laugh. He was like, the house is turning into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah. We're the same. Thankfully I've got a very understanding wife, Tracy.
Yeah, same here. I
But
think we both have.
yeah, she loves listening to me play. She loves a lot of the because we have an album. I recorded an album as well. I must actually send that to you. I never even thought of that.
Brilliant.
But my daughter plays drums, so we have two drum kits in the house. My son plays guitar. So he has 5 or 6 guitars as well, and amplifiers and pedals, and he was actually gigging last night as well. So he's going to be a musician or audio producer when he's old. So it is a very household filled, musically orientated family. Thankfully, I've converted them all.
You've converted them all. Yeah.
Yes, brainwashing, some might say.
Yeah. Well, look, it's a good thing. I mean, we all like have like music playing like literally every day. There's not
Yeah,
a record playing, there's a CD playing, there's music playing, and we have as well some fun on a Saturday night. It's a good friend of mine, Brian. So shout out to
yeah.
Brian if you're watching this.
Hi, Brian.
He's big into music, the same as me.
Good.
And we go to some gigs together as well. We've gone to a couple of weeks back. There was a Neil Young tribute
Oh, very good.
band, and they played in the Theatre Royal here in Waterford.
Excellent.
So they were brilliant. It was just two of us went to that. And next year, actually, we booked the Pink Floyd tribute
Oh,
band in Wexford. So we're going to
fantastic.
that. And Emma's coming as well, my daughter, to that. And
Brilliant.
maybe the whole family, like, everyone's thinking of going to this. It's not until next May, I think.
Yeah.
But we're all thinking of going together. But we have a bit of fun this Saturday night because what we do is we pick an album
Hmm.
and we have a quiz on that album. So I'd be quiz
Very good.
master. So I'd come up with the questions, 40 or 50 questions,
Yeah.
and it'd be boys against the girls.
Yeah.
So it'd be Brian and my son Owen against my wife Andrea and Emma.
Excellent.
And it's always very close, like.
Yeah.
But so it's a bit of fun, like, and it was a good way as well to getting to know the details and the knowledge about how the music was made and like all
Yeah.
that stuff, which we all find kind of fascinating when you get into. And
Yeah.
there's so much stuff out there, like as well as I should probably know, like on YouTube, like you have the Professor of Rock, which I think is a fantastic YouTube channel
Yeah.
for learning about the different stories of the songs and
Yeah. I
and
love it.
he tells it in such an engaging way.
Yeah. I think that's why my son ventured into the audio production side of things as well. Because of our conversations back and forth about particular songs, we would have had very similar tastes. So he would ask, how is this effect done? Or what pedal did they use for this? Or, and I would
Right.
tell him anecdotes about how the song was recorded or things like that. And then explaining the layers that you build up when you're making a track. And it sort of got his brain ticking. So he's ventured down that route. But it's such a good thing to teach them. It's just in all aspects. But when you say about the, like, it's our family things too now to go to concerts. Myself and my daughter were at Green Day concert last Thursday in Dublin.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks before that, myself, my wife, Tracy, Jack, my son, my brother, David, and my daughter, Ava, all went down to Dublin, stayed overnight to see the Smashing Pumpkins, which is
I seen
favorite,
that.
my
Fantastic.
favorite band ever, as you can see
Brilliant.
from the merchandise that were purchased down there.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, they're a classic 90s
Yeah.
band, aren't they?
Yeah.
I know the Siamese Dream is the most famous album that they have.
Over 30 years old now.
30 years old, yeah.
Hmm.
Wasn't that
Yeah.
fantastic to see him like now, all these years later, they're
Yeah.
still going.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's unbelievable. Like when I first got into it, it was more Nirvana initially, and then I discovered the Pumpkins and it just never looked back from it. And I think I liked it partly because no one else did at the time. Everybody was in the camp of either Pearl Jam and Nirvana. You had to pick a side. The same as Oasis and Blur, you had to pick a side.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I decided neither and went to Pumpkins. And Roots just it's changed my life ever since. It's trajected me to the path I'm on today because of the friend circle that I got into, because of the interests that I had, because of the bands that I formed, because of the albums that I had, and
Sure.
their catalog is just so varied. They're not one genre; they're all genres. So if you're in the mood for an acoustic, they have it. If you're in the mood for psychedelic, they have it. If you're in the mood for pop and orchestral, they have it, sort of thing.
Sure.
So
Sure. And that's why, like, for my collection is so big because, like, I love most genres. The only genre that I don't have any time for is country Irish.
yeah,
Me being Irish, sorry, folks. I'm, I'm proud
yeah,
Irishman, but country Irish is not my cup of tea. But
mm,
like, I mean, when I got into music, Stephen, it was again around the same age as you, 11, 12. And
yeah,
was that moment, like, first I can remember music is how I took in such you know, it resonated with me so much was that critical moment in my life when I was going from primary school to secondary school.
yeah,
And like I was 12 years of age and you know, you're stuck in this exam hall doing an entrance exam at 12
yeah.
years of age, into like it was St. Mel's College in Longford, like I'm from Longford originally.
Okay.
And remember how scary kind of that was because I remember looking
Hmm.
out the window going, oh, I'd rather be out kicking football with my mates. I don't really want to be in here doing this.
Yeah.
So I flunked it really, like, I wasn't really focused on or interested in doing it.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
there was a whole hall full of boys, it was a boys'
Yeah.
school.
Same as me.
And the kind of a boarding, like there was boarding pupils and day pupils as well. But so because I made a complete mess of it, it turned out that they categorized you back then into A, B, C, and D, depending on how you do.
Yeah.
So I fell into the D category, like,
Right.
which I'm glad of in one way because that was the funnest kind of a class to be in. Like, I was in all the
Yeah.
messers
Yeah.
and we didn't take it too seriously. Whereas like
Hmm.
we'd always be looking in the A class, like it was very studious. It all seemed very serious. But
Yeah.
but at the same time that was tough because like you had to kind of, grow up like, just back in the 80s and
Hmm.
there was back then, like there was bullying going on back then that I don't think they get away with now.
Yeah.
I'm
Agreed.
talking about both in the class with the classmates and the teachers as well. Like a lot of them are priests. It
Yeah.
was
Same.
hard.
Same
It
with
was a
me.
hard school,
Hmm.
hard station, as the man said.
Yeah.
But I found my solace in music because, like, actually, I was a very quiet, skinny little like 13-year-old in first year, and
Yeah.
didn't have any social skills as such. And I found it like, you're thrown into a class back then. There was 50 in a class.
Right.
That can be an awful lot
For
for a
sure.
young lad to kind of like process. But at that point, I'd found music, and like, yeah, I used to spend a lot of time kind of in my room,
Yeah.
yeah, listen to the different types of music I was discovering. Like for me, it was Elvis
Very
Presley.
good. Yeah.
I started off it, and the Beatles
Brilliant.
after that.
Yeah.
And so they were my two kind of passions throughout my teenage years. I just got into them, every aspect of them. Like, I have my wall covered in pictures of them, and like it's
Yeah. Of
Ryan, I think my room was back then.
course.
And we're back in the 80s, just coming into CDs.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of sorry that I didn't look after my CDs a little bit better back then, but I was bought on the whole sales pitch that, like, they're indestructible, like you can do what you want with them, like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of my CD collection from back then are scraped and scratched, and
Yeah.
I wish I'd put a little bit more care and attention into minding them. But that was really important because it gave me kind of some um, inspiration from, you get into the words, the lyrics, and
Yeah.
you're finding out about life, and then you start, you're meeting others in the class, kind of a little bit into music as well.
Yeah.
Although even then in the 80s, I was, I remember being slagged off, going, "You're into Elvis and the Beatles, like, that's historic, like that's
Yeah.
Stone Age, like, because
Yeah.
they were into, Bruce Springsteen, Dire Straits, and Duran
Yeah.
Duran. That was the 80s.
The
But
current.
but it's timeless. I mean, like all music, like it's funny the way it
Mm.
works out. As time went on, then you kind of open your mind to different genres, as you said, different types of
Yeah.
music, and it's there's so much good music out there.
Yeah. I think I had a
Um,
very similar story. I went to an all boys school with priests, and I think we were the last year. I think I was in third or fourth year, but we were the last year that corporal punishment was allowed.
right. Okay.
So I remember being lifted up by my sideburns and stuff like that by the teachers. But yeah, again, same on the in the
Wow.
playground then. Um, you used to get into your own little cliques with musicians, other people like-minded, and we used to swap cassette tapes as well. And we used to sit, like everybody knows with the meme, you used to sit there recording on your cassette player and try and start it and stop it at the right time. I just loved that. I just loved the excitement of what are they going to play? Are they going to play the Pumpkins? Are they going to put the Nirvana song on? And then I remember one night listening to a Queen concert. It was the last Queen concert that was on the radio.
Right.
Um, Recording the whole concert and stuff on it. It was just the buzz of it. But again, like you say, it's meeting those like-minded people that then sort of become your allies and friends, and everybody else did their own thing. School was quite difficult as well. But I think we're not meant for school in the creative sense. It's not the same. It's not conducive of the environment. It's very regimented, and you have to be here and listen to this, sit then there. And whereas artists are more creative and spontaneous.
That's right. It's like trying to teach a fish to climb a tree a lot of the time.
Yeah. And then calling it stupid when it
Yeah.
can't. Yeah. Oh, for sure. I did do after school guitar club and stuff that just to get extra. I already knew how to play the guitar, but just to get, I used to bring in the music teacher, really cool guy. I can't remember his name, but I used to bring in a and ask him, can you teach me this for next week? So he would go home and learn it and then teach me the next week. And then I was all proud that I could play this song. And then eventually, because I can't read music, so I just play by ear now.
Right.
But
Okay.
I can do the same now in any song. I can learn it and pick it out just from that experience growing up, learning to play something just by ear, which is brilliant. And don't need to. I probably should learn music, but it's too old now.
Yeah. And isn't it really great that music, that resonates with us? I know, like in my case, like I got into the Beatles and some of the solo stuff. You mentioned the song Imagine,
Yeah,
John Lennon, and that music has a way of touching your heart, touching your soul, that is really life affirming. And
yeah,
it's hard even to describe and put into words what it means to me,
yeah,
and how it's helped me, and given me a lift in my life in so many occasions when I needed it.
yeah,
And like we spoke briefly off air, that with music and the music industry and all of that, there
yeah,
is a dark side there. But I feel, it's my opinion, that the positives and that music brings, and the impact that they've had on people's lives all over the world in a positive way so
yeah,
much outweighs that.
yeah,
It really does.
for sure. And like the good thing about it is it's totally backed up by science as well in terms of the frequencies and how that resonates with us. But I think before that, it, like for me, even when I was learning therapy, I learned about the Vakov system, the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory, the different senses that we have. Like the auditory
Mm.
for me is probably the strongest because like everybody else that has, some sort of connection to song, it's like a time machine. As soon as you hear it, it's like smelling the smell that you walk past the bakery, you go back to your childhood of when you first smelt that smell. So music does the same for me. I can remember the first time I heard that song, where I was, what I felt. But then when I was growing up, you probably the same, but when I was ever in a certain mood, I used to look for a certain song to either make me feel worse or make me feel better. If I was sad, I looked for a sad song to justify why I was being sad and
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
thing. And it helped. It helped me in whatever way, whatever I was dealing with at the time. But it's such an unbelievable thing that has existed in the world, music, and how it connects to so many different experiences and interactions and stages of your life, for sure.
absolutely. And it's always good as well to keep an open mind, because at one point I was completely of the view country music, is no, not for me, until I went over to Nashville in
Okay.
2007,
Yeah.
or 2008, excuse me. And we visited the Country Music Hall of Fame, myself and my wife,
Yeah.
right, on a trip to Nashville and Memphis as well,
Yeah.
because we were going to Graceland and
Brilliant.
all the Elvis Presley stuff, which was great.
Yeah.
But to go to Nashville and, to experience how music there, is 24/7, like, it thrives.
Yeah.
It's music is part of Nashville, what it is, and the whole scene there. Every bar you go into, there's live bands, and,
Yeah.
every pub, it's music orientated, like,
Yeah.
and when I, when I was coming home from that trip, like, I was a converted kind of, I could see I was listening to Hank Williams,
Yeah.
and Merle Haggard, and
Yeah.
some of those artists, thinking, hold on a minute, maybe I dismissed this too quickly, and
Yeah.
I got into that. I could appreciate that
Yeah.
type of music more, even though, like, I think there's a big difference between old school country music
Yeah.
and the new kind of poppy country that's out there now. But as you said, if it's something like country music, especially, because
Mm.
the old thing about country music, folks, if you play it in reverse, like, you get your dog back, your wife back,
Aye.
your home back, and you're sober.
Yeah. 100%.
But
Yeah.
but sometimes, like, if you're in a certain place in your life, it's always nice to know that there was someone out there that experienced similar feelings to you,
Yeah.
and maybe you had it worse off than you.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not so bad after all, like, because sometimes we can blow our own kind of situations kind of out of proportion, and that kind of monkey mind can
Yeah.
give us a catastrophic kind of of viewing it in that moment. So it's nice, to stick something on the turntable that kind of brings you back down to earth.
Yeah. Well, that's it too. And uh, country for me is a strange, like I said, when I grew up in the house, I hated it because I heard it every single night. I hated it. But again, then
Yeah.
as you mature as a musician, you can
Mm.
appreciate the craft that's involved, the chicken picking and the alternative picking and the skill that goes into playing it. So there's definitely an appreciation. My daughter and my wife actually really like country. My other daughter, Jessica, she really likes country, Luke Combs, the modern stuff. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah, it's just,
But it's such a wide area as well. Like you
yeah,
have bluegrass, you
yeah,
have, like country itself, there's so many different categories within
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And, like you have then more of the country rock stuff,
Hmm.
like, Johnny Cash, who like you
Yeah,
can you can put into a number of different genres that he covered.
yeah,
And that's actually Johnny was one of the first artists that like my kids got into,
brilliant.
a couple of years back. That's when it started, Johnny Cash, Elvis, and moved on from there. And it's been, it's great that it's they've got it and gone into it. It's kind of funny that my friend was saying the other night that asked them, "Have you heard of Taylor Swift?"
Oh yeah,
I should never heard of her.
there you go. You've done something
I don't
right.
know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'll let you figure
No.
that out.
Yeah, each to their own.
Each to
Each
their
to
own,
their
yeah.
own. I think it kind of in a way, if you really think about it, it's good that there is other genres out there because other people that you don't associate with can listen to that. And our little clique over here can listen to this stuff. That's the way I felt growing up. It's changed now, obviously, but it was always, you hear the mods and the rockers, they're always against each other and things like that. As you listen to that, the rivalries, it always created a competitive, healthy rivalry and things of whose music was better. So
Sure,
there's always a need for different genres to help different people get into.
sure,
There's,
sure. And I see as well, I mean, as I said, I'm still a huge Beatles fan and Elvis fan as well.
yeah,
And I do have a lot of their records, obviously. And I go to, not every year, but every
mm,
couple of years, I go to Beatle Week
brilliant.
over in Liverpool.
Yeah,
It's based around the Adelphi Hotel in Liverpool, but also down Matthew Street. I don't know if you've
yeah,
been to Liverpool, the Cavern
not yet.
Club, and all of that's the good stuff. And I've been there now over, I think I've been 15 or 16 times since
Fantastic.
96.
Yeah,
And like I have some great friends, that I've met through that, and we reconnect every time I go over. Usually go over my own, but I've
yeah,
dragged everyone with me at this point. I've dragged Andre, my wife. I've dragged my mom. I've dragged my dad, my sister, my brother-in-law, the whole lot. I brought whoever I could drag with me, to keep
yeah,
me company. I would, but like I'm okay as well in my own company because once I get there, like I know so many uh,
yeah,
fellow fans as well. And we connected and kind of hang around, and
yeah.
it's only for a couple of days, but to be be a couple of hundred tribute
Oh, very good.
bands,
Yeah,
and not only Beatles, but to be the Who,
yeah,
with the Kinks, that kind of 60s stuff, the Rolling Stones,
yeah,
and that's all great. But at the same time, I now and again I could listen to the Beatles like for 6 weeks nonstop and then put them away and not listen to them for 2 years. That's kind
yeah,
of the way it kind of is for me.
yeah.
'Cause, you're part of these. Don't know about you, but I'm part of a couple of groups on Facebook,
Yes,
like these Elvis collector groups, and there's some fans out there that uh, like as you said, each to their own.
yes,
But I couldn't imagine just listening to just one artist.
mm,
That's it.
yeah,
You have some people out there that you see in these groups that they show their collections, and it's just Elvis. It's just a room full of Elvis records, tapes,
mm,
CDs, pictures, and there's Elvis records on the turntable every day.
yeah,
And as much as I love Elvis and I'm a huge Elvis fan, I think there's a lot of other good music that you're kind of missing
of
out
course.
on doing that.
Yeah, well, fan is short for fanatic, so put it that
Yeah.
way. They're fanatic about it. But yeah,
Never thought about it like that.
no, that's what, yeah, that's what it is. Fan is short for fanatic, fanatical about it. But I was that way too with different bands throughout the years. There was started off with Nirvana, then with Smashing Pumpkins, and then Kula Shaker, and then back to Smashing Pumpkins. But you just go through that cycle of it. But now I am where you're at as well, where I could put a band away for a couple of months or years and then come back to it, and then it sounds fresh. I love
Yeah.
that. I don't know if you do it, but there's on YouTube, there's the reactions. Do you ever watch the reactions? So it's a style of
Oh
YouTube.
yeah, I'd have. Yeah, I've seen a few of them.
I
Yeah.
love them. I absolutely love them. It's you've got these people that would never listen to that type of music, listening to that type of music and reacting to it. But I think what does it for me is I get to, through them, I get to relive listening to it for the first time, which is such a buzz.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people have reacted to Black by Pearl Jam, which would be a very big song for me, but seeing people's reactions to hearing it for the first time reminds me of when I heard it from the first time, and I can live sort of vicariously through them for 5 or 6 minutes when I'm watching the video. But it's a really good channel to get into.
There's so many good
Mm,
channels there on YouTube.
yeah.
There's a lady, Abigail Defoe. She lives on the east coast of
Okay.
the States, and she has a channel called Vinyl Monday.
Well, okay.
And she's only a young girl, 26, 27, and she really gets into it. Like every album review, like she changes her outfits and that depending on the album that she's reviewing. I seen this week she was reviewing Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA,
Brilliant.
and she kind of had her hair kind of done in the 80s style and
Yeah.
dressed in, a pair of blue jeans and
Yeah.
and all that stuff in a white t-shirt.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I mean, definitely it's good to kind of like put an artist away for a while and then rediscover them later on. Like very
Yeah.
recently, I hadn't listened to Pink Floyd in a number of years.
Yeah.
I just happened to get back into it and then couldn't stop listening to them. Like got through all the records,
Yeah.
and we were in that zone for about a month.
Yeah.
It's a deep dive. Like there's a lot in it to
It
get
needs
through.
it needs to be done.
It needs to be done exactly. But like it's great. It was great to do and rediscover. Sometimes you forget how
Yeah.
good some of this music is. When I was listening to Dark Side of the Moon,
Yeah.
like you kind of be reminded, geez, it's such a fantastic record
Yeah.
and one of the best records ever made.
Mm.
For years, I'm kind of going, yeah, I kind of know it's a fantastic record, but you kind of forget, you kind of forget, like until you stick
Yeah.
it back on, and then you're reminded, oh yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
why haven't I listened to this now in a few years?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. There's a lot of albums that got Dark Side of the Moon. Actually, when my brother was in Australia, we went out to visit him, but on the flight over, there was no TV. It was 29 hours. It was crazy. So there was like headphones and a little arm thing, and they had these different albums you could choose, and Dark Side of the Moon was on there. So again, I listened it through and through, but I think maybe 3/4 of the way and nodded off to sleep. But I must have listened to it about 14 times. Maybe not 14, but maybe 10 times on
Yeah.
repeat, the whole
Right.
album. It
Yeah.
was just subconsciously going on in the background. I woke up sometimes and heard something and then fell back asleep again, but it was still playing. And I love the fact that you go back to music and maybe you heard something that you'd never heard before that was always there. Like maybe an extra ride cymbal on the drums or something. Tubular Bells was a good one for that. That
Yeah.
anytime you went back to it, there's such a vast song, so many different things going on that whenever you go back to it, you hear something that you never heard before, and it's like rediscovering that a little bit. It's magical.
It is, isn't it?
Mm,
It is, and you get new things each time, especially a classic
yeah,
album like Dark Side of the Moon. And as well as that, like when you're discovering music and you're learning about music, it's all one thing leads to another. An
yeah,
example that I would give you is that a band that you've mentioned, Nirvana.
yes,
Of course, probably one of their most popular albums, live at New York, Unplugged in New York.
Yes.
right? On that album is a track, The Man Who Sold the World.
Mr. Bowie.
And that actually was my doorway then to discovering
Very
David
good.
Bowie because
Ah,
I realized it wasn't an original Nirvana composition.
yeah.
And, so I kind of had dismissed, like, because I grew up in the 80s, and for me,
Yeah.
David Bowie was less dance and, that kind of stuff, which really
Hmm.
wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't think.
Mm.
But I'm glad that I got into him through that song, through that on that Nirvana record,
Yeah.
because I discovered then, of course, some great albums like Ziggy Stardust and The Spiders from Mars, which is one of
Yeah.
my favorite, definitely in my top 20 albums of all time. Just a
Yeah.
classic record.
Yeah.
And so in that way, then you might listen to that album and pick up something from that hold on a
Yeah.
minute, he was influenced by T-Rex, and this
Yeah.
guy T-Rex, who's he?
Hmm.
Let me have a listen to him. So it's kind of like a domino effect. Like, you
Of
can
course.
there's so many uh, elements to it, and there's so many paths that you can take.
Yeah. And speaking of like Bowie as well, obviously influenced Nirvana. Also, the Pumpkins reference a lot of their songs to him, and they actually cover a lot of their songs live, a lot of Bowie songs like Space
Right.
Odyssey.
Okay.
They would do Space Odyssey, a really good
Would the
rendition. Oh, I'll let you hear it. I'll send you the link. But Space Odyssey, their version, but they reference, Spiders from Mars and things like that in their lyrics. But I think what impressed me about Nirvana as I got older, that album, the the Live in New York, like they had such a big platform, such a big stage to promote, but half of their set was cover songs. And it's like I
right?
had to
Okay.
wrap my head around that. Like, they didn't take the opportunity to push themselves. They pushed other people's songs. And it was just such an impressive thing for me that impressed on me. You have the biggest stage in the world at the time in the 90s
Yeah.
when that was, VH1 and Storytellers and the Live and Unplugged in New York, where all these big, massive bands were doing the Unplugged series, and Nirvana chose to do half their set as cover songs. It was brilliant.
Brilliant, brilliant. And there's so many different other artists that I could mention that we've got into recently. Of course, the Doors,
Yeah,
like a lot of that 60s music, like just resonates with me. Like it was just a great time for that classic rock and
yeah,
roll. Um, and you can hear the influence on it. Even like the Doors had on bands like the Divine Comedy.
yeah,
That
for sure.
same kind of a sound. So like it's all kind of related, like, and all these different artists, even though they might be the same genres,
Yeah,
are pulling ideas and inspiration from each other.
yeah, for sure. Divine Comedy, great Northern band. Excuse me, I've seen them a few times too. And yeah, it's just there is that fine line where you cross over into interpolation, as it's called, where there's a recent Green Day song came out. I'll not mention the name because it's not appropriate, but it models
Yeah,
a Pink song. But then if you go down the rabbit hole, the Pink song models a Deep Purple song and the exact same riff and the exact same melody. So all three songs have the exact same melody, but they're inspired by each other completely directly. It's interesting one to look at.
excellent, excellent stuff. Stephen, it's been great having you on the show and getting into this stuff with you here today.
Been a
It's something
pleasure.
that we could talk about all day
Yeah,
and probably all night.
yeah,
We could be here talking for a long time. But I'm just at one eye in the time, so I'm not going to
sure.
keep you here much longer. But before
Not
you
a problem.
go, I have to ask you, can you give us, let's say three, can you give us three songs that mean the most to you in your life over the course of your life, and also three albums as well?
Wow, how can you do that though?
I know,
It's,
it's putting you on the
uh,
spot, isn't
it is put me on the spot. I would prefer to
it?
think about it, but I'll just answer quickly now for the sake of time. But songs, Imagine by John Lennon, Stand Inside Your Love by the Smashing Pumpkins. And the third, probably Changes by Charles Bradley,
Right,
which is a
okay.
cover of a Black Sabbath song. So those three, probably that are standout-ish. Albums, Dark Side of the Moon, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness by the Pumpkins, and ooh, that's just too many.
There's loads, isn't there? Yeah, it depends on what day
It
that you
depends
ask
on
you
the
this
day.
question.
Yeah.
Can
Rubber
change,
Soul.
right?
Rubber Soul.
Rubber Soul. Okay,
Rubber Soul.
brilliant.
We'll go with that.
Well, they're all classics. You can't go wrong with those ones. And
But I'm going to throw it back with you. What's your choices? See, it's
well,
not
I'm
that
gonna
easy.
start off with albums because albums will probably be easier than the songs.
Sure.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to have to go with the first one with on the T-shirt I'm wearing. I don't know if you've seen it, folks. It's a
Abbey
very
Road.
famous record cover.
There you go.
Abbey Road. uh, Abbey Road is my favorite Beatles record.
Brilliant.
So I have to pick that. Oh Jesus, it is
I,
hard, isn't it?
I told you.
Yeah, so I have to go like actually the second one. Agree with you, so we're on the same page for one record. So for number two, I have to pick Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. So how
Brilliant.
could you not? It's
Yeah.
just the perfect record, and you know a lot of these records that we're doing, said folks, with the quizzes on and getting into with the kids is like if you look at a particular artist, I always pick out the most accessible album in their catalog, in their
Mm.
discography to start with.
Yeah.
So like Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, there's so many like hits on that. There's so many
Yeah.
recognizable songs to sing along to and stuff. It may not be his most artistically um acclaimed album, but
Yeah.
for kids to get into it, it's perfect, like, you know.
Yeah.
And the same as like David Bowie, be Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. But for the third, like that would be in the running, like for top three. But for the third one, I'm gonna have to pick the Beach Boys, Pet Sounds,
Okay. Very good.
for the third one, because I just think it's just a beautiful piece of music.
Yeah.
You know, the way it was recorded, the story behind it, and the vocals are magic.
Yeah.
You know, it's a grower as well. It's you you really have to be in the mood to kind of sit
Yeah.
down and listen to it. But you know, it could go on. But if I had if I had to if you put a gun to my head, Stephen, and says here, you know, now what is now just this is what's come up for me to
Yeah.
bring to a desert island, even though like
Yes.
probably wouldn't be any record players on a desert island, so it'd be a
This is
waste of time
true.
to bring them. But
Always
if it
wondered
was
about
to
that.
bring, so that's the three albums, the three songs. Oh, geez, that's a hard one.
I know.
Well, just out of what it means to me in my life, I'm looking back
That's
on,
why I picked.
yeah, you have to pick That's All Right, Mama by
There you go.
Elvis Presley, because that's for me where that kind of started
Yeah.
everything in that particular record. That's All Right,
Yeah.
Mama, Elvis Presley. So that's one. Um, I'm gonna have to go to the Beach Boys again because my favorite song of all time is "God Only Knows"
Perfect.
by
Yeah.
the Beach Boys. So that would be number two. And number three,
Mhm.
I would pick Time, Pink Floyd, because
Excellent.
at this part and this stage of my life, it just, you remember I was saying recently that I got a few minutes ago that recently we got back into Pink Floyd and just listened to them
Yeah.
for a month and hadn't done so in a long time. But when initially that I got into Pink Floyd, I loved the song, I loved all the songs on Dark Side of the Moon, but because of the age I am at and
Yeah.
the
It's
the
different.
perspective I'm sitting at now, that
Hmm.
song resonated with me even more. The lyrics were
Same.
profound and
Yeah.
gonna blew me away all of a
Yeah.
sudden.
Yeah. It does. I totally agree. As you're saying it, I totally agree that songs hit different when you're older, especially time. Spot on. Yeah.
Because
You're,
I was listening to that song and one of the lyrics, the lyrics, if you're familiar with the song, folks,
yeah, yeah,
I'm paraphrasing, but it's along the lines of like, 10 years has passed, kind of, where is that gone in the blink of an eye?
yeah.
And they really hit home with me because, the way the memories come up on your Facebook, Stephen.
Hmm. Yeah,
And look, coming up the last year of like the birth of my daughter, Emma.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking, Jesus, what,
I know.
what?
Hmm.
Where did that go? I'm like, it's scary.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there will be
And
the train.
my kids are 13, 19, and 20. That's scary.
See that flew,
Hmm. That's crazy. Unbelievable.
isn't it?
But that's the way the mind works.
It is. And so don't waste a moment of it, folks, because life does go quick and make the most of every moment. Life is for living. That's in the word life, live it, and make the most of every moment. Embrace it, focus on the positives, what you're grateful for. And we're bringing in all her hypnosis, her hypnotic stuff now, as well as the
Yeah.
music, but it's all related.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. And yeah, and take the time to, you enjoy your music and there's so much of it there. Whatever resonates with you, I'm sure some of
Mm.
the stuff that we have touched on today, myself and Stephen.
Yeah.
Maybe you might like some of it, maybe not, but like whatever music that you're into and that floats your boat, great, go with it.
To
It's
each their
all
own.
for the same reason, to pick us up, to give us that lift and to,
Yeah.
to touch our hearts, to touch our souls and, to really reach a place where, it's only music can do, isn't it?
Yeah. That's it. There's nothing else like it.
Indeed. And on that note, we leave you go. Keep rocking in the free world.
That's it. Enjoy. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very, very much.
Great stuff. We've enjoyed the convo here today, talking about
Definitely.
one of our passions.
Yeah. Our biggest passions for sure. Well, my biggest passion anyway, but yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. Outside of the family.
and mine
But
too.
took me
And mine
places
too.
I forgot.
Well, listen, keep going to the concerts
I will.
and keep playing that guitar
Definitely.
and buzzing off the music. And so we may have get you back on again for part two sometime in the future.
Certainly. More than happy to. Thanks again. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome, Stephen. Listen, we leave
Speak
you
to you all
go,
soon.
and look, we'll be in touch.
Speak to you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Great stuff. Okay, folks, it's that time again to bring another episode of the podcast to a conclusion. You know, I've really enjoyed this discussion here with Stephen here today. A little bit of a change of pace, yes, to the podcast here, but nonetheless, it's music. It's such an important aspect of my life and Stephen's life as well. And I thought, and it's made for a great episode here of the podcast. And I hope you've enjoyed listening and watching. So until the next episode of the podcast, listen, be good to yourselves, folks, and we'll see you all again soon.